been announced, talking to the program team of EIFF 2023. Stay tuned. So it's July and I'm here with Simon Bowie. Simon, how are you?
I'm good, thanks. How are you?
Great. Thinking lots about summer films right now. It's a really blockbuster season at the moment. And we're going to be covering some of those blockbuster films. And we're about, actually, we're hitting like, this will be airing the week before the really big double bill, if you will, or everyone's talking about the Oppenheimer Barbie sort of. Do you have your double bill ready to go? Or are you picking which one are you picking?
Unfortunately, I'm away this weekend, so I can't do the full Barbenheimer experience that everyone's talking about. And I think Oppenheimer is like 3 hours long.
Yeah.
So combined with Barbie, that's like a 6 hour, that's almost a full work day. Sitting down and watching these films back to back. I think I'm probably going to see Barbie first. Yeah. I might see that on Friday before I go away, actually.
Well, I mean, I'm a Greta Gerwig fan, but I like the trailer for Oppenheimer, and not as much the trailer for, but I'm still excited to see it. So I'm certainly will see Barbie probably first.
Yeah, I think I'm more excited for Oppenheimer in general. Although I was disappointed with Nolan's last film, Tenet. But I'm looking forward to Oppenheimer. It's just a bigger time commitment, than Barbie.
True. And as we'll be talking about, we have had quite a lot of film time commitments over the last week watching films.
Yes, quite.
So we will be talking about that. But also in the news of film right now in Edinburgh, the Edinburgh International Film Festival program has been launched about a week and a half ago. It's through the Edinburgh International Festival this year. So if anyone's been paying attention to what's happened over the last year, the Center for the Moving Image, the organization that housed the Film House and the Edinburgh International Film Festival, went into administration. But luckily, the Edinburgh International Film Festival has been saved, and it's currently sort of been saved with the help of the Edinburgh International Festival. And we will be talking to the program director, Kate Taylor, and one of the programmers, Rafa Ross, later on in the program. But a few really good films, and we'll probably be talking about it more next month. But I'm excited to see and highly recommend people to check out Jenny Finley's Your Fat Friend, which stars Aubrey Gordon.
I'm looking forward to that.
That film won the Audience Award. Well, I think it world premiered at Tribeca, but it won the Audience Award at Sheffield Film Festival. So we reviewed it last month. So you can check out that review. But if you're in the area, we definitely highly recommend going to see that. And also, is there anybody out there as well? Amaya highly recommended that from Sheffield as well. I think it premiered at Sundance. So those are a few. I mean, there's quite a lot of documentaries that look really good. We'll be talking to, again, the programmers later on. Simon, any films that you are looking forward to seeing, or did you notice that you would maybe want to see?
Yeah, I've heard great things about Passages, directed by Iris Sachs. It's got Ben Whishaw and Franz Rogowski, who I've always loved in films I've seen him in. So I've heard great things about that from film festivals. So looking forward to seeing that. Chuck Chuck Baby is meant to be quite good as well. Two women fall in love amid a chicken packaging factory.
Great. And it's smaller this year, so it's, I think, over six days, I believe. But yeah, it's fully packed with some really good international, Scottish, UK films, short films as well, from Bridging the Gap and Scottish short films. And there will be an outdoor film festival actually as well. Also a big shout out to my friend and mentor, Susan Kemp, whose film is a work in progress called The Linda Miles Project, a manifesto, is being screened on the 19th of August as well. Ooh. So it's and they're going to have a conversation around Linda Miles. Linda Miles will be there. So that was one of the film house sort of film festival in the 70s, sort of 80s programmers, incredible person in film in Edinburgh. And Mark Cousins and Susan and the archive activist group Invisible Women, they'll all be sort of doing a big day around that work in progress film, but also around Linda's work. So that sounds really exciting as well. So you can check out their, I think you can check out their film festival program and let us know what you think. But yeah, we'll be talking a lot more about that later on in the program with the programming director and programmer. Well, I'm back and I'm here with Kate Taylor and Rafa Salas-Ross, part of the programming team, program director Kate and programmer Rafa of Edinburgh International Film Festival this year. Thank you both so much for joining me today.
A pleasure. Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
And firstly, congratulations. I know it was a great deal of effort to get this particular Edinburgh International Film Festival underway in such a small amount of time. You were both part of last year's film festival, which took a turn a bit, or was a new direction for the film festival, at the very least moving it to August as well. How would you say this year you're sort of branching off to something new, or sort of taking that same sort of vision you had last year as well?
Well, I think we were really excited by what happened last year in terms of the film program. So Christy Matheson, it was her first year as artistic director, and there were a few things that seemed to open the festival up a little bit. One was a kind of recommitment to internationalism, so changing the competition from the Michael Powell Award. She had a long correspondence with Thelma Schoonmaker around it becoming the Powell and Pressburger Award, to be a mix of kind of UK and international films. And that was something, you know, we were excited by. It was also, I mean, we had a cracking opener and closer with After Sun and then After Yang, two films that kind of exemplified very different styles, but like super cinematic. And I think the way that the program was communicated to audiences, it was we kind of moved away from geography of, you know, here's the British, here's the American Indies, here's the rest of the world, to a more of a here are some pleasures, the vibes, the program. So hopefully audience members can find things and hopefully take risks. So we were like, yeah, it was ace. It was like, we got the feedback we got from the audience, from the industry was like, yeah, Edinburgh's back. So we were kind of ready to, you know, to get cracking, to rock and roll on the next one. And then obviously in October, it just knocked everyone's it just knocked everyone off course. It just, you know, it was a kind of sudden and yeah, really horrific thing to happen so suddenly. Yeah, but without going too deeply into that, it did occasion, you know, a lot of like goodwill, a lot of outpouring of you know, of heartbreak and of grief, and but also of like what the festival meant to people. And that was something, you know, we felt a responsibility as custodians of the festival to keep it going, but also we felt like kind of like that if it does go on, then you should be bold and you should continue to be bold. So last year, again, I think the program was had a lot of first and second time features. That's something that we're looking at. We're looking for new talent and really see that Edinburgh should be a place to launch new talent. It was a very sex positive program. It was a pretty hot program last year. I feel like we've upped that this year. I feel like Passages probably does, brings the whole bar up quite a lot across the board. But I think, looking at the variety for audiences, I guess it's not a departure from last year, but perhaps it's a kind of building on it. But then again, of course, it's like a massively different form. So to go from, I think we were up to about 90, just under 90 features all in last year. And this year we're on 36, I think, of which 24 are like brand new features, 5 are retrospectives. And then, because we're doing this outdoor screening weekend as well, we've got like a bunch of kind of recent features as well. So it's a really, to some extent, it's like super curated, but then it's also, it's like, you can't really do a survey of the world in like 24 new features. So it's going to be like a snapshot where we hope that we've kind of got enough variety, but also, really stayed with a commitment to filmmakers who've got like a strong perspective.
You mentioned the opening films last year, and I was, I like to see that, you have sort of Scottish here and also, international. What drew you to the opening and the finale films for this year?
Sure thing. Maybe I'll speak Silent Roar, and do you want to talk about Fremont?
Yeah, let's do it.
Cool. Okay. Well, Silent Roar was obviously a film that we've been paying attention to. We've been tracking. I think a lot of people have seen and enjoyed Tumults, Johnny Barrington's previous short, although that's been quite a while. But I think the idea of a surfer movie was intriguing to us. Coming of age story, that's very rich territory for a lot of first-time directors, and being shot on the Isle of Lewis. There were a few things that were immediately kind of exciting before we came to watch it. But then I think what excited us just as much as those elements was just how cinematic it is. It's a really tactile film, and the landscape is not just it's not just backdrop, and it's not just pretty. It is like under the skin. Is there something, well, not under the skin in the film, like under the skin in terms of it's it's a mood. It seeps in. I know there's something about it also, the way that the film, it does unexpected things. It has a very odd sense of humor. It's like it's irreverent about sex, it's irreverent about religion. You're not really sure where it's going. And then it's got this cosmic element. And I think that is what kind of drew us in, surfing and the cosmos. And just I can't wait to be in the audience as people kind of groove with it and hopefully vibe with it, and I get confused by it and then hopefully go with it. So that's what we hope from that film. It's odd, it's beautiful. Rafa, do you want to talk a bit about Fremont?
Yeah, I think Fremont is one of the films in this year's program that deals with the idea of displacement, not only geographical but cultural as well, and it does so in a way that is just so lovely and heart-rending at the same time that it approaches themes that are massive in a way that feels like it's a simple thing to do, and it very much isn't. It's a film by Babak Jalali, who was with us at EIFF in 2010 with Frontier Blues, and whose career has been just developing strongly since then, with Carolina Cavalli penning the script, and she's an incredible Italian writer who just had her first feature as well. So it's a very interesting partnership, and it is a film that we are so excited to bring to audiences because we fell in love with it immediately, and we just imagine that the same will happen with people who will be able to watch it on a big screen, and what an experience it will be. It's a beautiful black and white cinematography, gorgeous music, just a very quiet film but effective in ways that are so interesting, with incredible leading performances by first-time actor Anaita Walizada, who is just a revelation, truly. It's a beautiful, beautiful face on screen, and just a presence that feels like a star-making performance, and aided by people like Greg Turkington, who people will instantly recognize, and who's a very funny and captivating character here. And same thing for the bear breakout, Jeremy Allen White, who has conquered the hearts of people all over the world over this past year. And I think he will very much do the same here in a lovely padding on screen. So we're very excited to have 3 Months, the closing film. Is a film that, as I said, we loved, and we love being able to show it to audiences, and we cannot wait to see their reaction.
That's wonderful. So, you know, at Cinetopia, we're big fans and often screen documentaries. So I was really impressed and excited to see some of the films that you chose for this year. We were at Sheffield and saw your Fat Friend Audience Award, and I was very excited to see that Edinburgh is going to get that. Orlando, I wish I had gone to Berlinale, but Orlando was my political biography seemed like a film I really wanted to see. And my colleague Amaya said, "Is there anybody out there?" Was one of her favorite films from Sheffield as well. So what are yours? You know, can you talk a little bit about the documentaries that you chose, some of those films, and or maybe your other favorites that you're very excited to share with Edinburgh audiences that you might have seen at other festivals?
Well, I think that's great that you've seen Your Fat Friends. You're kind of you're on that team already. It's an amazing film. For it to win the audience award seems totally justified. Maybe I'll just say a quick thing on that as well. In that, for us last year, you know, Christy was really clear that, you know, premiere status isn't everything, and premiere status isn't something that actually most audiences. I think a world premiere is something really special, the first time a filmmaker shows their film, and we always want to be a place where Scottish and UK talent in particular can really have their films shine. But working with films from Sheffield last year definitely was a great thing for our audiences, and I think this year as well, both Your Fat Friends and Is There Anybody Out There will benefit from the fact that people do have that buzz around them. Orlando is actually the first film. Orlando, My Political Biography, is the first film that we invited into the program, and for us was a really key like setting of the tone for the kind of cinema we want to represent. Paul B. Preciado, we know to some people as a writer, philosopher, trans activist, and with this, his first film, he's really created something that's very witty and very, you know, very sharp, but also, yeah, just really kind of accessible and sassy and fun, and it really draws you in. I found it's a very moving film in ways that I wasn't expecting. Obviously, the source material, Virginia Woolf's book, is, you know, it's all about metamorphoses, but I think in this there's something that really builds that metaphor in a really beautiful way. So Orlando was one that jumped out. I think what else?
I think Was There Anybody Out There was another massively key title for us, because it was a film that we saw at Sundance and was such a revelation in a way that is, as with Orlando, is a first-time feature by Ella Glendinning in this case, who's a filmmaker who is so attuned to the power of the particular to become universal when done correctly, and when done in a way that is sensitive and personal and just so clever. It's a film that is beautiful, but at the same time, it is so shattering in many ways. It's a film that talks about disability in a manner that isn't pedantic or didactic, but it's a first person tale that talks about disability within society from a very special and particular point of view. And we were just captivated by Ella on screen, by Ella the director, by the sensitivity to the way that she built a documentary, not only formally but also in how she lets us in, and brings the idea of being seen and seeing others and understanding the dialogue that occurs when you're just in the presence of someone else and you can recognize yourself in them. So we're very excited to have Is There Anybody Out There here. It's a film that I've been telling everyone about, and I think is a beautiful communal experience, and is going to bring up such interesting conversations afterwards.
Yeah, maybe I'll jump in also with a film that's not strictly a documentary at all, but is very kind of research based. There's a film we're showing called Ungentle, which is it's from two artists, Hugh Lemmy, who also does a podcast and a book now, Bad Gaze, and artist filmmaker Onyeka Igwe, who's recently been at Common Guild in Glasgow. And it's a one person kind of narrating. It's Ben Whishaw plays the kind of unnamed narrator, talking about the kind of combined history of male homosexuality and espionage in Britain in the mid 20th century. And it's this voiceover that goes over these really kind of bucolic images of these kind of seats of power, be they the kind of boarding schools, the kind of elite kind of colleges and spaces, but also the kind of cruising spots that sometimes kind of intersect with those. And that's again, it's a film that you know, it played as a exhibit in London, I think, and then we saw at Berwick. But it really, like, in terms of the kind of the new program, the new features, this is a long short at 37 minutes, but it really we felt it was as strong as any of the other kind of UK films, and we really wanted to give it that space and hopefully, you know, encourage people to see it, because I think it's really a dazzling kind of film. I guess across the board we're about half and half UK and international in terms of the new stuff, with kind of 5 Scottish films within that. I'd also just give a shout out, which is not documentaries at all, but like to the retrospectives, because you know, Edinburgh is a major part of the Edinburgh DNA, is like to do some great retrospectives. And this year we didn't really have enough run-in or research time to do something that would be a full retrospective. So to do something that was quite it was kind of in partnership partly with Cinema Rediscovered in Bristol. They were doing, I think they were screening Betty Gordon's Variety, which was so excited, is also getting like a theatrical release through this very cool new distributors, Other Parties. And they were also doing the Wayne Wang, Life is Cheap, but Toilet Paper is Expensive. And then kind of expanding from that, we knew that Dry Long So was starting to tour, the Colleen Smith film, and Tokyo Pop came to us as quite a discovery. I think there's something about 4 really different, unruly, exciting, formally progressive voices in American cinema of the 80s and 90s that also maybe harks back to some of the recent programming in Edinburgh. I remember coming to the season where Susan Seidelman was here and Lizzie Borden was here a few years ago, and that was so good. I felt that was really one of the stronger kind of retrospectives of recent years. So I just wanted to give a shout out to that as well as something that's cracking.
Any other favorites for you, Rafa?
Well, I will say it's very hard to pick favorites in a year where it feels like every single one of the films that we program is a favorite. But I love to see home audiences seeing local talent on screen and to have that connectivity. So I think we were so gobsmacked by the violence and the urges and the desires and the conflicts at the heart of Kill, Roger Griffith's director of The Beach, who we are presenting to audiences for the first time, and we are so excited to be able to do so. So it will be lovely to see people at screenings for a conversation afterwards. Very same thing with Hope Dickinson Leach's The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, which tackles violence, but in a very, very different way. And it's a not necessarily rare, but a very unique experience in seeing Edinburgh on screen in a way that really showcases all the beautiful sinuous alleys of the city and all of their cinematic glory. And that brings a tale that is very heavily associated to London to what feels like a more fitting home of Edinburgh. So it's a nice opportunity to be able to revisit a classic through a new lens while also paying homage to all the beauty of Gothic cinema that we all know and love. And yeah, we have Interesting the Beats, we have Chuck Chuck Baby by Jenny Spee, which is such a lovely experience on a cinema as well, to be able to celebrate joy and to celebrate love and finding yourself through others and with others, to find your community while also finding your partner and your love and the things that you want from your future.
One question I had, I was going to ask about the retrospectives, but one question is, obviously the Edinburgh International Festival sort of went to help bring the festival back, but how do you see yourself embedding the program in terms of working with the festival, or are there certain things that you've brought into the program that sort of ties with the Edinburgh International Festival's sort of program itself?
Sure. Well, I mean, the way that it's worked is they stepped up in our time of need, and threw a sisterly arm around us, and we're like, okay, guys, don't stop, because if you stop for a year, it'll be really hard to come back. And so it's due to them that we're able to continue, them and the support of Screen Scotland. I think in terms of the program, it's been so interesting working with an organization that just has such a different time frame. So like they announced their program in March, I think, and they were like fixed in January, and we hadn't even started then. And the nimbleness that a film festival has is great in terms of, I don't need to get a whole orchestra to come for every single film. So, we can work close to the wire, although my God, that can be quite scary too, working so close to the wire. So yes, I think we've learned quite a lot. I hope they've learned something from us. We've definitely learned from them. But I think, in terms of program, we've only got to work with very few of the partners that we would like to this year. And I think in terms of the run-in, we've done with the Cinema Under the Stars, which is the weekender at the Old College Quad, which I think is going to be quite magical, hopefully. If the weather is good. And looking at titles for that, we tried to find some crossover with the international program. So we're screening Parasite, which shares the composer Jang Jae-il with Trojan Women, which is playing as part of the international festival. And then also Hero, which is Tan Dun is the composer, and he's the composer of the opening night celebration Buddha Passion at the Edinburgh International Festival. And yeah, I mean, Hero, I think especially it's great to see on the big screen. I think, I mean, he won the Oscar for Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, which we showed as on the outdoor screen last year, and I think gets a lot more attention. But Hero, the Zhang Yimou film, just rewatching it and thinking about the colors and thinking about how that's going to look outdoors, and the possibility of introducing that to some young people to see some of those set pieces, the fight scenes, like particularly the stuff in the courtyard, the stuff on the lake, it's like amazing. So we're really glad to show that. And then I think once we had Hero in place, we were like, well, we've got a little bit of wuxia, why not go for Everything Everywhere All at Once as well, which again a lot of people have seen but not perhaps outdoors. So it's a different context. I think we just wanted to do something that would feel special in that space and would be joyous, but obviously it's a different context to doing things at the St Andrew's Square, where everything is totally open, people can come and go, and the focus isn't really on the films, and they have to be films that people are very au fait with. Here we've got some new films, so we've got something like Scrapper, which is again one of the best debuts, but one of the best UK debuts of the year. Charlotte Reagan's film about a young girl and the kind of errant dad who comes to look after her. So I think we just wanted sorry, just on that, like, so working with International on Hero and on Parasite, and then working with like Alchemy to screen artist films in that space. I think we were really delighted when we saw the 4 Julia Parks short films, these kind of 16mm portraits of community and activism and nature and kind of all the relationships and entanglements within them that she made while she was on residency in Hawick. And I think the idea of those films being outdoors really excited us as well. And then, you know, we've got the Lego movie and we've got Puss in Boots: The Last Wish as well. So if people want that, we've got that too.
Yeah, well, we're big fans of outdoor cinema at Cinetopia, so
absolutely, yeah.
So we will send you the best weather vibes ever, because that does that. But it all sounds magical, and very excited about all of it. And like you said, there's so many amazing films to choose from. So we're gonna delve much more into it. And look forward to seeing the films, and then also hopefully speaking to some of the directors and other filmmakers as part of it next month. But I can't thank you enough for taking the time to talk through the program. It really means a lot. And yeah, best of luck as you're continuing to get the festival going for next month.
Thank you so much for having us. Thank you.
We'll see you in a month.
Yeah, see you in a month. Yeah.
So what else are you up to this month or coming up, Simon?
Yeah, I'm gonna try and see more of the summer films. So Barbie and Oppenheimer, obviously, gonna check those out. I feel like I might check out Indiana Jones at some point, because I actually saw them filming some scenes in Glasgow when they were here filming some of the parade scenes, I think. So I might check that out. I haven't heard great things, so I might just wait until it's on streaming. But yeah, other than that, I am continuing my project where I'm reviewing every film I see this year. That's at reviewsperminute.simonxix.com. I'm reviewing the films with a word count that matches how long the film is in minutes. So this Mission Impossible one was a long one.
You got a lot more to talk about.
A lot more words. And Shabu, which is only 76 minutes long and is a better film, I didn't get to write as much about. So it swings and roundabouts. I'm also doing a new podcast with Jim Ross of this show called the Xenopod with an X. And we're watching and analysing all the Alien franchise films. So from Alien, a masterpiece, to Alien versus Predator, a not masterpiece, to the latest Ridley Scott ones. So I'd encourage anyone to check that out on any podcast platform they like. That's the Xenopod with an X.
And how many is it? And one episode per, and how many are there?
We're doing one episode a month. Episodes come out on the 4th Wednesday of every month. We have done Alien, Aliens, and Alien 3. So the next episode that will be coming out in July is Alien Resurrection.
But how many total do you have?
Let's see, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 in total.
Great. Yeah,
but we might do some bonus episodes around discussing the future of the franchise and stuff like that.
Right. Oh, well, thank you so much for joining, and thank you everybody for listening. And we'll be back next month for a full Edinburgh International Film Festival special. So see you then. The week begins. We're at the beginning of the week, and at the end of the week, Edinburgh International Film Festival will be upon us in Edinburgh. And it is from the 18th to the 23rd of August. It's a little shorter this year, as we discussed last month, a little bit more in full. this has kind of been, the film festival's been safe, and we're, and the fact that they were able to put that whole program together in this amount of time is incredible. And we did discuss all of their program, the whole program, with the programming team last month. So feel free to check that out in our other episode. We're going to review 2 films in this podcast that are coming out. Big films, I think, at least the first one, Passages, AFIRE Sachs. So it will be out, I believe, on Mubi as well.
You know what I was doing last night?
No, but whatever it was, you sound very excited.
It's my party and my husband doesn't want to dance with me.
I'll dance with you.
So Gary, do you want to give us a little intro to that?
Yes. So Passages. It's the latest film from American director Ira Sachs. It's set in Paris, and it follows a filmmaker called Thomas, played by Franz Rogowski, who is he's married to an artist called Martin, who's played by Ben Whishaw, a gay married couple. And after finishing his latest film, he begins a relationship with a teacher called Agathe, which is played by Adele Exarchopoulos. And then what follows is a kind of a love triangle, but quite a open and honest one. So it's not like he's having an affair, and then they play it along those lines where there's like the big reveal. It's kind of just like he's very open and tells his husband straight away that he slept with a woman the night before, and it's kind of about his psyche, and I guess his relationship with his husband, and then with his girlfriend, and then kind of how we see the different sides of his personality, and then how that plays out for the 3 characters. And yeah, found it was a little different to what I was expecting, because I think, like I just said, I expected it to be a kind of an affair movie, and I know it's been billed as like the horniest film of the year, and so I was going in there with, like, I don't know, high expectations, and it was a film that when I stopped watching, when I finished it the first time, it kind of felt like I was a little bit underwhelmed by it. But then in the days that have followed, I've still been thinking about it. I think it's one that I've been thinking about more and more, and I guess I'll watch it again, because there's just something. I think it's interesting, the fact that it's set in Paris, because the director's American, the characters are, so the main character is German, his husband's British, and then his like mistress, if you like, is French. But it's set in Paris, and it feels the way that a French film would feel, in terms of the way that it captures these human emotions and the relationships between the characters. So I found it was interesting that that it's set in Paris. Found it like a interesting character study. And yeah, what did you think of it, Amanda?
I think it was, as you said, it was an incredible character study. I think I mean all of these performances were incredible. I would largely say the character Tomas was just so believable that the only thing I would say is it made me uncomfortable in quite a few spots, but partially because of the character being sometimes really hard to deal with. I would say sometimes people have said a narcissist, if you will, and the way that he treated the 2 people within the love triangle. But really, really beautiful the way everything was shot. I think specifically, you mentioned the horniest film of the year. I think some of these scenes that are being talked about is largely in the way that it was shot, the way that it sort of rests and allows sort of, these intimate moments to happen, and for the acting and all that, that to come alive. And it's very powerful and also very painful, and so I think overall, the film was really good. Writing wise, incredible. And I have to say, I have not seen that much of Ira Sachs before, but it makes me want to see quite a lot more.
Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna echo the two of you basically. I thought this was an excellent film, and I think Amanda's point about the writing being superb is really on point. I think for me the strongest part of the film, which is not to imply any of the other parts are weak, just merely I think the standout element is Franz Rogowski, right? He's an actor that I really enjoyed the performances of, and I think primarily before this, I saw him in. Actually, to come to think of it, so we're reviewing a Christian Petzold film after this. The way I'm aware of Franz Rogowski is from a Christian Petzold film in Transit, and I thought he was superb in that. In this, it really shows kind of the man's versatility because it's a completely different performance, and he does play this kind of like very, emotionally and sexually open, narcissist is the word for it, who basically kind of seems to think the world revolves around him, and this film does, and I think it's good this film does, and it makes him a very captivating presence, and that is down to that Franz Rogowski performance. I think the supporting performances, so Ben Whishaw as his husband Martin, and then Adele Exarchopoulos as Agathe, the woman that he meets her by dancing with her at the after party after his film, because he's a filmmaker, finishes shooting, and Martin's kind of like too tired and rejects doing such, and that's how they meet. And basically, I found the way that everything revolved around Franz Rogowski's character is really, really interesting. I found you could see why people say the Hardy's film of the year, but I think what's interesting about it is it's very much in. It's not what, as Gary said, it's not this kind of like typical kind of like affair film structure. It's a lot more open and challenging than that, right? In terms of how these characters are interacting and what they're getting from one another or not getting from one another, and what exactly is going on is really interesting. It's really domestic in terms of like the scale of the drama here, but the performances are all so good and have such good chemistry. And it's interesting we're talking about a film set in Paris here, because I think we spoke about a film on the show previously where we talked about the fantastic chemistry between the characters, and I think this is another one where a lot of it hinges on that, and it comes together in a couple of ways here. In terms of a lot of the sex scenes here, I think they are really well shot. They're done quite differently between the ones which are put between Franz Rogowski's character and Ben Wishaw's, and then between Rogowski's and Adele Exarchopoulos's. They're done quite differently, but again, it just shows this kind of intense, passionate chemistry, and it really shows kind of like how these people are getting caught up in this, but also how they react differently to it. I think the way that Agathe interacts with Thomas is very different to this a lot weirier performance from Ben Whishaw, and I think you can kind of imagine Ben Whishaw putting in this sort of performance where like there are these flashes of passion, but he knows who he's dealing with, right? Yeah. And the central character, and he's a lot weirier about it, whereas Agathe, the female character, she doesn't. This is kind of new to her in the same way it is to Thomas, which is obviously why he's started pursuing this. And I find it, I thought it was an absolutely fascinating film because you just can't take your eyes off these characters. And I think it's that gelling of how it's been shot and the way that these characters have been written is just really captivating. And I couldn't take my eyes off it. I think it's an excellent film. I thought it was absolutely superb.
Interesting, just what you're saying there, going back to the sex scenes, because I know that there's always like this discourse that comes up every so often about sex scenes in films and the necessity of sex scenes in films. And I think without the sex scenes in this, there wouldn't be a film, because, and it's not to say that they're done in a gratuitous way, but I think in terms of the character study, just seeing how, like, he's like, the way that he has, like his mannerisms and his body language with one is completely different to the other, and that speaks to like the length of time that he's known them, and the dynamic between him and his husband, and then with him and the woman in the story. So I think that it's really really does a great job of like using the sex scenes as a way to tell the story of this narcissist, and how he seems to kind of like it can flip between one and the other, and he just tries to pick people up and drop them again when he's bored. And he's definitely not like a likable character, but he's a character that's like captivating, and it's interesting seeing how it plays out. I really enjoyed this scene where he won't go into like the details, but where he meets Agat's family as well, and then that kind of like sees the clash of kind of two sides of his personality kind of coming together in quite a funny way. But then it's also it's very sad moments as well in the film. So I just think that it's very well written, as you mentioned at the beginning, Amanda.
Yeah, and I mean, I agree with you. I think it is in some of those scenes, as you said, the intimate scenes that you see this intimacy, you see the character, relationship, you can see the acting, but it's also the way and the pacing of the film. And I think brought up those two scenes, particularly Gary, that made me think about the fact that I very rarely saw the cameras move or change or whatnot, allowing sort of the scene to happen, and why then it becomes more not claustrophobic, but you know what I mean, more apparent of the great performance, and also more painful, as well, because it's not necessarily a totally happy story. I also would say the music is really good in it as well. So between the diegetic and non-diegetic soundtrack, I think that was really, really lovely, and how that kind of sort of played in the film, and even with the ending as well. So it's really beautiful. I mean, I also love good films made in Paris. So we'll watch this one again, most definitely. And highly recommend you go see it at the Edinburgh International Film Festival this week.
Yeah, I recommend people go and see it. And I will just mention the performance of Adele Exarchopoulos. I think she's phenomenal in this film, and she's on such a great run of films at the moment. She's becoming like one of my favorite actors, and she was really, really great in a film called The Five Devils earlier this year that I think's on Mubi. So people should check that out. Then she did Quentin Dupieux's Smoking Causes Coffin last month as well. So she's got great range, and she's great in this, as are all three.
Okay, so check out Passages as part of the Edinburgh International Film Festival this week, and we'll move on to the next film.
Toll. Hallo? Jetzt sag doch mal.
Ja, wir werden nicht allein sein.
Ich brauche meine Ruhe, meinen eigenen Platz zum Arbeiten.
Ist die Nichte einer Arbeitskollegin meiner Mutter. Nadja.
Kommst du nicht mit?
Nein, wirklich, die Arbeit lässt es nicht zu.
Schade.
So ein Arschloch, ich bin so ein Arschloch.
So the next film that's part of the film festival this week is AFIRE, directed by Christian Petzold. Jim, tell us about this film.
So AFIRE, so Christian Petzold, we actually, as I said, we mentioned in the last review, the only other film of his I tell a lie, I've seen two other films of his. I saw Transit, which I was a huge fan of, and this is his latest film. There is one film he's done in between, which was Undine, I'm not sure how you're meant to pronounce it, but it's it had the the same lead actress in it, in Paula Beer, who shows up in this film. But the premise of this is that you have two young friends. So you've got Leon, who is a young writer who's trying to finish his novel that he's fairly convinced is crap, played by Thomas Schubert. And he's with his friend Felix, played by Langston Ubel. And they have gone to a holiday home, which I think in the story is owned by Felix's mum, but I can't really remember that part particularly well. But in the summer, and the idea is that Leon is going to finish his film there. Felix is going to kind of relax a bit, and when they get there, it's actually being occupied and let out, unknown to them, by someone else, and it's Paula Beer playing a woman called Nadia, and she is in a sort of casual but relationship with this lifeguard called David, and basically, it's the interactions of these four people. And all their various kind of insecurities, securities, confidences, and all the rest of it, and how they all play up against one another. The reason for the title is that basically there's this backdrop of the idea of kind of growing forest fires, which are slowly kind of like creeping closer to where they're staying. It's a background thing. It's not necessarily, for the majority of the film anyway, very prominently presented, but that's the idea of it. And the German title is actually Roter Himmel, Red Sky, right? Because these fires are turning the sky red. But despite that kind of like dramatic backdrop, it's basically the interactions of these characters, right? And their insecurities, attractions, and all the various things that are kind of like bouncing around in the psychology of them and how it's playing out in this very limited location. It basically largely... So the vast majority of the story takes place in this one house and then a beach that's nearby, right? And how they interact. There's a little bit of a coda at the end, and at the start of the film, you see Felix and Leon break down, and they have to walk the rest of the way to this home, and then the film basically stays there from there. So I'm interested to see what you two made of this.
I wanted to like this more than I did. Struggled with it a little bit in terms of like I couldn't figure out its tone, and I know that it's kind of being called a comedy, and there is comedic elements to it, and I think they do come to the fore a little bit more as the film goes on into the third act. But I just found, I guess, like ties in a little bit. There's a thematic through line with Passages, and the main character is this kind of toxic artist, but Leon is just this kind of self-centered writer who, I don't know, I just didn't find his character I found his character more annoying than interesting. And I don't know, I think like the first hour or so of the film was quite, I don't know, I found it quite dull, quite boring. And then it does kind of take shape a little bit, and then there's the whole forest fires closing in on them towards the end. But again, that's kind of like the ending feels like the ending of a film that doesn't match with the first hour. I just couldn't really like, a little bit like what you said about Barbie at the beginning of the show. Like I just feel like the different elements in this film just didn't quite hang together for me. And I guess like comedy is like quite subjective, but I think I was watching a comedy and not realizing it was a comedy. I don't know, it just didn't click with me. Maybe it's just like the type of humor that it was going for, but I know that Amanda liked this more than me, so if you want to let us know what you thought of it, Amanda.
Yeah, and I actually agree with you, Gary, that I think I saw a real connection between Passages and AFIRE, partially just that there were quite a few scenes about being on holidays in Europe, and sort of what you do kind of outside of that, period of time when you're like in the city, in the domestic space that is your everyday, and what you do outside of that. So I conceptually liked that already, where the space in which we were in, and potentially maybe also because I just came from like a beach vacation in France. I kind of thought the way this was being, filmed, and sort of the way that they kind of let the dynamic breathe, while it might have been slightly slow, was interesting. And I was curious about all these characters and how they all sort of will fit together. And I agree with you that Leon, the main character, was, disgraceful and annoying. And but I also found Tama and Passages to be quite frustrating, almost more, because he had more power over the other people, where here I feel like everyone found the main character to be quite annoying, and sort of let him be, a curmudgeon. But I did really like the film. I thought the film was well put together. I think the impending, also right now, all that it feels very like prescient or like timely with what's going on, in the world with fires and so I really felt that kind of sort of impending thing happening outside of this very, very small bubble of a world where they were figuring out these dynamics. And so I liked that sort of mixture between the two, and that really didn't like take over. It wasn't like a horror, a horror movie about, natural disaster, but this was a real thing that was affecting the dynamic. What did you think, Jim?
Yeah, overall, I think I liked it. It didn't. And I think we're all agree with Gary is it didn't quite come together for me as I would have liked. I think in the end, I think a lot is probably going to be made of the lead character being an arsehole. Yeah. But frankly, I actually kind of enjoyed that. I think it's a very good performance from Thomas Schubert, and I think where I'll differ with Gary is I got quite a lot out of that on a comedic front. I found his just kind of intense kind of self-centeredness and thinking the world's against him and all the rest, and super self-seriousness. I thought it was really quite something, and I think that performance is really good. I think Paula Beer's performance I think is very good. I think she kind of embodies this enigmatic woman, let's say, without it tipping over into kind of like the stereotype that you could have with that sort of role. So I think there's a lot to like there. I think what I would say is a little bit the story kind of maybe tips a little bit towards the old kind of an artist must suffer for his art type thing. I think it does it a lot better than when I've seen that story before, but it's not necessarily new in that regard. I think also the fact that it's kind of that kind of like light, well, not light, that's the wrong word, but that sort of like Euro art house kind of style of comedy where it's very dry. I think it's that for the majority of the film, and I think it tries to pull off this kind of like tonal shift in the kind of closing moments where I don't know if it really manages it that well, or if it brings it home the way it would. It feels a little jarring, I think. Overall, for most of the runtime of the show, I enjoyed it. I liked watching it and these character interactions and the way that they played off it. And it's very much a film based in those kind of character complexities, right? And I think it does it very well. I think there's a couple of things it doesn't do great, and I think unfortunately that kind of slight pivot towards the ending, without giving too much away, I think there is a pivot that happens. I don't think it sits particularly great in that respect. But beyond that, I think there's a lot of things that are really good and really well observed and funny. I think watching Leon, the novel's character, procrastinating when he's meant to be kind of like, this super serious writer, and like watching him just kind of futz about because he doesn't want to confront kind of like his opinions of his own work and this sort of thing. I think that's all fantastically observed. And I think, as I say, that performance really brings that home. So there's a lot I like about it. I don't think it quite came together as well as I would like. And to me, that's a little disappointing because I think Transit, which I think was 2018, I think it came out, one of the best films I saw that year. I thought it was a superb film, and the way it's constructed is intricate and strange and kind of beguiling in a way, and in a way that this film isn't. It's a very different type of film. You wouldn't necessarily expect it to do it in the same way, but I think for what it was obviously trying to do, it just doesn't quite stick the landing as well as I would have liked.
Yeah, I could see that from both of what you've said. And I just thought it was very sensory. I agree. Like I often say that I don't understand why French films are called romantic comedies when they're very often depressing or dramas. But I found this more funny than a French romantic comedy, but I wasn't laughing out loud. I think it was more that I saw both of these films sort of together, and they were both sort of character studies and dynamics of relationships, and sort of both had this kind of sensory, slow, muted way of filming, very complex dynamics of relationships, and that I thought both handled that well, and performances were good. Passages certainly was a stronger film than this one, but I enjoyed it.
I will just say, not to be all doom and gloom on the film, I will just say that the I guess the climate change commentary of kind of rumbling on in the background while these characters just get on with their lives, kind of oblivious to an extent that it's going on, is like it's quite an interesting way to show it. And I think I don't know, I guess the title makes it seem like it's going to play a bigger part in the story than it does. Yeah, I just find overall a little bit of a confused film that doesn't quite have the payoff that I was hoping for. But yeah, there's things to like in it, I guess. Maybe I'll rewatch it.
Okay, so AFIRE is playing Tuesday, August 22nd. At View as part of the Edinburgh International Film Festival. As we said, there's 6 days of films happening, and we've all sort of talked about certain ones. I made a big case for some of the documentaries, particularly Your Fat Friend, and I'm really excited about the idea of the Linda Miles project. So I wish I could be there to see that, which is happening that Saturday. So there's a discussion around Linda Miles, and then there's a work in progress documentary by a colleague, a friend of mine, Susan Kemp. How about you both? What films have you seen? Would you recommend? Are you looking forward to? What other advice and tips can we give to people when they're looking at this bigger program?
So in terms of kind of like the rest of the program, I haven't necessarily seen a huge amount. One that I have seen, however, is I've been fortunate enough to see Past Lives by Celine Song, which is also playing the festival, and I think it comes out very shortly after the festival. But if you want to see it, I think it's worth catching at the festival. I thought it was excellent. I thought it was a superb film. It's a romantic film. About a woman who was born in South Korea, but moved to Canada and then New York. And she's now married, but basically she had this childhood sweetheart who comes to visit her, and her suspicion is that he's come to see her, but he says he's not, and want to reconnect because they kind of attempted a long distance relationship about 12 years after she moved away, and then this section of the film takes 13 years or 12 years after that. And I thought it was a very smart, intelligent film. It doesn't play out the way that, a little bit like Passages, actually, kind of like, to put that kind of synopsis in, you'd have preconceptions about how it would play out, and this film doesn't. And I think it's very, very smartly written. I think it's a superbly written film, and I think the technical approach that Celine Song has taken to some of the scenes let that tone develop in a really beautiful way. So I would definitely check out the festival. It will come out, I think, with a reasonably wide release, I think, after, if you can't catch it there, but it is playing the festival, and I think if you want to support the festival, that'd be an excellent choice. I think that's a superb film to check out.
Great. And Past Lives is playing on Sunday and Monday, so Sunday the 20th and the 21st of August. Gary?
Yeah, I'm very much looking forward to Past Lives. I'll be there on Sunday night to see that. In terms of things I've seen already, I've watched Femme the other night, which I found very interesting. It's this story of 2 men who kind of live their lives disguising who they really are, and then their paths cross at the beginning of the film in quite a violent way, and then the paths cross again, and the film kind of plays with the changing dynamic between the two guys. George Mackay, who we usually see as these like nice guy parts and things like Sunshine and Leith and Pride, he's playing a real piece of work in this one. He's all tattoos and swagger and toxic masculinity. So it was interesting seeing him in a role that kind of goes against his usual type. So I would recommend that one for his performance. I've also seen Scrapper, which is the debut of Charlotte Regan, that's showing as part of the strand of outdoor screenings at the festival. So I think that's on Saturday the 19th at 6 p.m. and it's a pay what you can screening. I think it comes out in cinemas a couple of weeks later. But that one's really good. It's about it's a father and daughter story, like a young dad with like maybe like a 10-year-old daughter. It's kind of like got shades of on the surface level, it's got shades of After Sun in that. It's a story about a dad and a daughter, and it's a debut film by a director called Charlotte. So there's like these little parallels. But yeah, in terms of the tone and the way that it's plays out, they're very different films. But I would recommend Scrapper. I think there's a good mix of like these kind of big hypey releases in terms of like Passages and Past Lives, and then there's also kind of lower key Scottish films. There's a couple that I'm interested in seeing. One of which is the Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, which is the cinema version of a production that started off as a stage production at the Leith Theatre. I think it started as a kind of hybrid cinema stage production. I'm not quite sure how that worked, but I'm interested to see how that translates to the big screen. And there's a young Scottish actor, well, I'll say young, he's maybe like in his mid-20s, called Lauren MacDonald, who I thought was really good a couple of years ago in a film called Beats. He's got one of the leading roles in this, so I'm interested to see that. There's also a thriller called Kill. It's another Scottish thriller set in the Scottish Highlands, I think. So that looks good. So yeah, a good mix of things in the program, and it's all bunched into 6 days, but something for everyone, I'm sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And, obviously check out everything you can. They're having outdoor cinema as well. I think there's some interesting pricing structure on that. But I did just notice that Ira Sachs is actually speaking with the program director, Kate, as part of the book festival meets film festival on Sunday, the 20th as well. So there's a few salons where you can meet some of the filmmakers. And if you check out the website, it's through Edinburgh International Festival this year. You'll be able to check out the whole program, download the program, but don't forget to check it out and go to a few cinema events as part of your Fringe experience if you're in town. All right, so that wraps up our show for August, and are we looking forward to a big autumn? I know there's quite a little bit of whether or not certain films are going to come out. We have Venice, we have Toronto, but some films are being pushed back. But any exciting things on the horizon you're looking forward to?
Probably I think it's not until October, but there's a new Scorsese film coming out. That's kind of the next huge one for me, I would say, before the end of the year.
Guys, at the time this is coming out, Meg 2, The Trench will be in cinemas. Are you telling me we're not going to see Jason Statham versus the Giant? I haven't seen the original Meg, by the way. I imagine it's ridiculous fun, but otherwise complete nonsense. But in terms of stuff I'm actually genuinely looking forward to, I think Gary's pointed out the Scorsese one that's kind of on the horizon. I think beyond that, it kind of depends on whether some films hang around. Actually, there's a couple of interesting re-releases, right? I think there's an anniversary re-release of Serpico, which is one of my favorite films. So I think if you either haven't seen that or you've never seen it on the big screen, I think that'd be a good one to check out. In terms of kind of like big releases beyond that, I'm kind of struggling to remember a lot of them, but there's a lot of interesting little films coming out, right? And I think once you get to London Film Festival and then the immediate aftermath of that, there'll be another kind of wave of kind of interesting films to check out. In my case, I'm basically just trying to try to squeeze cinema visits in between looking after my daughter, who is wonderful, but is 18 months old, so is something of a handful. So, yeah, where I can.
I'll just chip back in. One just popped back into my head. It comes out, I think, on the 1st of September, and it's the directorial debut of Neil Maskell, who's top actor. He's been working in acting for 20 odd years, and he's finally went behind the camera, and he's got a film coming out called Clockenluder, which is a really interesting little political thriller, like a black comedy. It's got Tom Burke who's in that, who's an actor that I really like. So yeah, that was on at London Film Festival last year, and it's finally getting its general release in a few weeks. So check that one out if you can.
Well, that wraps up our show, and thank you both, Gary and Jim, for joining this month, and hopefully see you again in September.
Thanks, Amanda.
Cheers.